Disappearance of Nicola Bulley gripped the nation. Intense public interest, wall-to-wall media coverage, and an investigation that raised more questions than answers. In this special episode, we pull together 4 distinct voices. Experts from the worlds of underwater recovery, search operations, forensic strategy, and behavioral geography to dissect what really happened. You'll hear from Peter Faulding, the forensic search specialist who deployed high-frequency sonar in the River Wyre, sharing never-before-seen sonar footage and revealing exactly what his team encountered beneath the surface. From Neil McDonough of Triple R Rescue, you'll get an unflinching operational perspective on sonar use, along with his professional take on Peter's footage and how it fits into the wider search effort. Dr. Mark Harrison, an internationally recognized authority in geoforensics and search strategy, having worked alongside Peter in previous high-profile searches, Mark offers a rare insight into Peter's and SGI's specialist capabilities. And from Douglas MacGregor, a geographic profiler who will examine the Nicola Bulley case through the lens of spatial behavior and overlooked investigative leads. This isn't a single story told in a straight line. It's a convergence of science, field tactics, and investigative insight woven together to uncover what was missed, what still doesn't add up, and what it all means for the truth behind the Nicola Bulley case. Let's begin.
The disappearance of Nicola Bulley gripped the UK and the world. Beyond the human tragedy, it became a case study in search strategy, leadership, and the ripple effects of policing decisions. In this episode, we'll look at what happened on the water, the timeline of the investigation, why a crime scene was never established, and how those choices shaped both the search and the reputation of those involved.
Can't find her in the next 3 or 4 days in this river. If she's not here, then I'm confident she's not in this stretch of river. I'd be very confident of that.
So, Peter, at what point did you enter the Nicola Bulley case, and who brought you into the case?
Okay, I was contacted by Paul, the partner of Nicola Bulley. Paul contacted me on the Sunday to say, would it be possible to come and assist in the search? And I said, we can, but we can't just come along and barge into a police operation. So we need their permission. I'm used to working alongside the police, not against the police. We got a call from the police. I got a call from the police search advisor to say, can come up. And when are you likely to be here? I said, well, tomorrow my team will leave this afternoon with all the equipment, and I will fly up by helicopter in the morning. And the team arrived on site. I got there about 10 o'clock in the morning on the Monday, the 6th. I was picked up from Emma White's farm, and I was greeted by a couple of police officers there and said, when we get to the scene, there'll be a lot of media. As we went down, he tasked us with searching downriver towards Cartford Bridge, down towards the sea, which is a long way, many miles away. And as we went down, we could see the bottom of the river. It's so shallow and very clear. So any body were there, apart from the sonar, which was operating anyway, we would have seen anyone laying there. The reeds were searched by the police. The sniffer dogs were there. They would have picked up body scent straight away. Hotel, following morning arrived. He said, right, I want you to search up today from there to the caravan park, from the bench up to the caravan park. And we started the boat. And I said, while we're here, to the team, because police had disappeared at that stage. I said, take me down towards the weir. So what I want to do is search the hot zone. This is the area where Nicola, if she went missing, again, people do not disappear, fall into a piece of water that's benign, not moving, and fly off down the river. They don't do that. If you fall in the water and you are pushed or you're drowned, you will go to the bottom very near. You might struggle for a bit. You might try and swim a few meters where you're struggling, but you will ultimately go to the bottom and stay down until decomposition gases lift the body. And again, there's no exact science on that, how long it takes for it to come up.
Water speed is how fast the water is moving in one spot. If you dropped a leaf in the river, water speed is how quickly that leaf moves past you. Flow rate is how much water is moving through the river over time. It's the amount of water passing by. The College of Policing Review states that the river current on January 27th was 3.8 meters per second. That's roughly 12.5 feet per second. The Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs maintains a flow meter above the weir in the River Wyre at St. Michael's. That meter recorded a flow rate of 3.6 cubic meters per second on January 27th. It was 3.8 cubic meters per second on January 30th. Is this where they got their data? Here's the data that shows flow rates from January 25th to 31st, 2023. Anyone can calculate water current or speed, but you need special sensors to monitor and calculate flow rate. Flow rate and river current speed are not the same and cannot be equal, but they both depend on things like water depth and river width. So at what location was their data taken from? Was the SIO's hypothesis disproven by the river conditions and therefore river flow was conveniently changed to river current in order to fit the narrative, align with the theories of unnamed experts, and account for police divers not finding Nicola after 2 searches of the area in front of the bench?
So this was a video I done of the day, and you can see the stick just not moving. And this was a few days after she went missing. You would normally find the body within that area. She could not have drifted. It would be absolutely impossible for her to drift down there.
When we look at rivers flowing over weirs, studies in hydraulic engineering show that the water typically moves at around 2 meters per second. That's about 6.5 feet per second. This is a normal, expected velocity you'd see with a moderate head of water, not the extreme 12.5 feet per second figure that was mentioned in the review. In other words, while a weir does accelerate flow, the documented speeds are usually about half of that claim. Before Peter walks us through the search of the hot zone, I want to point out that SGI was never tasked with searching this area. Rather, they were purposely kept out of this area. On February 6th, they were tasked with searching beyond the weir, and on February 7th, they were tasked with searching from the bench to Rowan water, which Peter was told had not yet been searched. Let me reiterate that point. The entire length of river along the towpath when Nicola was unaccounted for 23 minutes had not been searched in the first 12 days of Nicola's disappearance. This aligns with the narrative of entering the water at the bench and floating towards the weir, but at the time, it completely ignored other potential scenarios, entry points, and possible crime scene staging at the bench, another case example of tunnel vision. While at the bench area, SGI took the initiative to search the hot zone, from the bench to the weir on February 7th, as there were no police divers in the area. Why would the police keep a private company and the only search team that has provided proof of sonar use out of this area deliberately if the police were certain she was not between the bench and the weir? Because there was risk of disrupting the narrative and exposing police dive team failures. Now let's find out what happened during SGI's search of the hot zone.
We went up, and about 75 meters from the bench on a little island, I call the island, literally I got a huge target, a huge anomaly in front of me, and it looked like a pair of arms, classic sonar image of someone laying on their side with their arms out and the head jutting out at the top. I said, right, I think I've found her, to my team. Right, turn around, go and scan the area again. So we went back up, we got exactly the same picture again. So I said, right, I need to look at these images and stop the boat. So we stopped the boat, and I'm going through these imagery, looking at them, doing some measurements. I said, right, I'll call the police. We need to put a diver in. And straight away, I think this is her. So what we did, I rang the police, sent them the image. I said, I think I may have found her. It's a clear image to me. Looks like a pair of arms and legs. We need to put a diver. You're not to dive. It was very clear. You are not to dive. We will dive. I will get our divers to search the area. So, okay, that's fair comment. Your operation, you can dive. How long will they be? Will it be a couple of hours? So she's going to be here. So anyway, we then got the police came in. We carried on upstream to take the interest away from the media, because they said, what's going on? I said, oh no, the police divers are just doing it at dive. And we didn't let on that was the only operational information that I had. So I'm not going to tell that to the media. So then we carried on up the river. I then got a phone call from my dive supervisor to say there's nothing there. And I looked at my team and said, what do you mean nothing? There's got to be something, because a sonar image, if you imagine a standing with your back to the sun, there's a shadow cast. So if you do this in the sun, put your arms out, you will see a big shadow of your arms and heads and legs. A sonar does exactly the same. It has to have an object to create a shadow. There will be no shadow or shape of an object for nothing to be there. So they said there's nothing, so they must be in the wrong area. Later on that afternoon, we finished our before I finished, I said, take me back down to the bottom and we'll rescan the area again. I've got a few more images. The target is still there. I said to my team, this isn't nothing, there's something there.
On February 7th, just minutes after entering the water, Peter's team first scanned the target near the island in the designated hot zone at approximately 10:32 a.m. This image was provided to police at 10:53 a.m. Just a few hours later, around 1:20 p.m., police divers searched the marked area and stated they found nothing. Later that afternoon, at approximately 4:30 p.m., Peter rescanned the area, this time passing closer to the bank, and captured this image. Notice there is no ground disturbance, which you would expect if the anomaly had been properly searched. Here's the comparison. This image shows what you would expect to see if the police had thoroughly investigated the spot. Now, the College of Policing later stated that this anomaly was in fact a tree. Here is an image of the tree that was located closer to the bench. But if the anomaly was in fact a tree and the area had truly been searched, you would expect two things. First, visible ground disturbance as shown in this image, and second, the shadow of the object would shift as the tree was moved during the search. Therefore, the sonar shadow would be noticeably different from when it was first scanned in the morning and when it was rescanned in the afternoon. As you can see, in both the morning and afternoon scans, the shadow remains identical. That consistency raises serious questions about whether the area was investigated in the way official reports suggest.
And in one page, it said the police search advisor said it was some of the most murky water they've ever searched. Yet the police diver in his part of the report said it's the most crystal clear water I've ever dived in.
In the Nicola Bulley investigation, police divers carried out all underwater searches in the hot zone, between the bench and the weir. On February 7th, a diver entered the water to investigate the sonar target identified by Peter Faulding. The diver later told the College of Policing with confidence, "I am 100% sure there was no body in that part of the water at that time. It is not very often I dive in such an unobstructed body of water with such a flat bottom and with visibility." If the riverbed was as flat and unobstructed as described, then every anomaly should have been logged, catalogued, and ruled out. A body, if present, would have stood out. And yet, investigators maintain that Nicola could not have been anywhere else except within this very stretch of water. Adding to the confusion, the police search advisor leading operations described the same section of river as being really dark, contradicting the diver's account of visibility and conditions.
And I was really baffled by this whole situation. So I went back. As I got out the boat for that day, I said something might not's right. Something is not right here to my team, and I got suddenly grabbed by one of the media. Said, "Hi Peter, how's it going?" I said, "Well, you know, I categorically state there's nothing else, nothing in this river, because the police divers just told me, and you grow up to trust the police, so the police have said there's nothing there." And I sort of believe the diver, thinking maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is, but there's definitely something there, but maybe it's not the body.
I can sort of give a guarantee that there's nothing in this part from the bench down to the weir.
When Peter Faulding told the media that there was no body in the river, those words would go on to define how the public remembered his role in the Nicola Bulley investigation. But if we look at it from his perspective, what he actually said and why makes the situation very different. That sounds like a bold claim, but Faulding has always been clear. He wasn't making that statement in isolation. He was repeating what the police had already told him, that their divers had been through this section of water and found nothing. So when Faulding said there's no body in this river, he was echoing the briefing he received from police divers, not going rogue or contradicting the investigation. The problem is, those words were later twisted into evidence of overconfidence, when in reality, he was in step with the official line he'd been handed. What we see here is the gap between what Faulding meant, what he was told, and how the media framed it. And that gap became the foundation for the controversy that followed.
On February 7th, specialist diver Peter Faulding detected a promising sonar target in the River Wyre's hot zone, the very heart of the search for Nicola Bulley. But the next day, February 8th, everything shifted. Faulding was sent home. A new police search advisor took charge, and police received advanced sonar equipment that could have confirmed his find. Yet there's no record of any sonar search in that critical area after February 7th. A lead was logged, leadership changed, new tools arrived, but the hot zone went unchecked. Was this a missed opportunity or something more? The unanswered questions remain.
So the following morning, I went up to the police search advisor, different one, and said, what we want to do is I want to search that area again, rescan the target, because I'm not quite sure about this. He said, you're going home today. You're not searching that area. And it was very hostile. And I thought to myself, something just not right here all the way along. We left it a couple of months. We went home. No one was happy, and I really thought there's nothing else we can do. So I forgot all about it. We went back, and I thought, well, I'm going to be probably invited to this inquest to give evidence. And I started going through the files. And I said, I'm just going to go through these files to prepare these sonar files. And with all of my experience, that is without doubt the body of Nicola Bulley laying on the bottom.
Now, for the first time, we're taking a look at Peter Faulding's never-before-seen sonar footage from the Nicola Bulley search. What you're about to see is the exact scan he says pinpointed a body within minutes. Footage that was never properly reviewed by police investigators or the College of Policing.
And we're just going to go down the river slowly. Now, this is what I see exactly as I go down the river. So you've got the red side. This is a port side, or left, as in boating or aviation, and the green is the starboard side of the boat. So we're coming down from the bench. Now we've just started at the bench, just coming into screen in the middle of the screen, near enough to the port side, to the left side. So a big tree down there. This is up near the bench area, quite deep water in the middle there. You can see that. You can see remnants of a large tree. There's the tree clearly just on the left side there. There we go, and we're going to roll down the river. Now we start to see a rough bottom coming in. An interesting area for a body, to get past certain rough areas. It can be a challenge sometimes. To look at the right side, the starboard. So this is the side the bank is, and we're just going straight down towards what I call the island. and you can see all the stones laying on the bottom. That's how accurate this particular side scan sonar is. It's extremely powerful. It's 1800 kilohertz, the powerfulest you can buy for looking for human remains. Now, you'll now start to see at the top of the screen a target coming through, which does look like human form. If you look at it now, we'll let it roll, and that is what I was looking for. So bearing in mind we pinged this target in the morning, I've come down the screen, I'm going to let it roll slightly more down, and you can see there's a sort of a sandbank there. There we go. Now, I'm going to talk you through this. What we've got here is I can see a large shadow. So if there was nothing there, it would be an absolute impossibility to get a shadow, what looks like a pair of arms to the left side there. Now, the actual target I'm going to highlight to you in a second. What I went straight to the magnifier whilst I was sonaring, and now I'm just going to run this over slowly. You can see the bottom here, leg, bent legs. I'm going to run up the back. You've got the head at the top, and then you've got a shoulder and an arm on one side. Now, if you run to the left of it, the shadow, like I said, it creates a shadow. What we've got here is running along the body, and now we've got a head in the middle, and we've got two arms sticking out. You can't miss it. It's very, very, very clear. To make it even better, just to give you an idea, I'm going to remove the port side channel. Starboard side channel. I'm going to go onto the port side. I'm going to wind it back slightly, get it center screen. And now we can do that again. We can actually put the magnifier over. There you go. You can see the bottom, bent knees, running up the back, up to the head. There'll be people say, "Oh, this isn't a photo. This is a sonar image." So please, it's a sonar picture. So we've got to remember that. I know this is graphic to some people, and I apologise for that. But this imagery, what you're seeing now, has never been seen by anybody apart from what's being done now. The only person who has this data is me. And the College of Policing never asked for this data to show to their experts. They made a simple judgment on a PDF image. Now, I'm an expert on this. I could not tell you without measuring and doing other things with this that it was it took human form or not. They said in their statement that they spoke to experts and it said it didn't appear to be a human form, but there was no questions asked further than that, and that's very, very important here. So you can do other tools here. You can take a length, you can do a rough length, and what you can do there, you can run that down, and you can look at the top of the screen, and you've got about 0.9 to a meter there to the back end, to the head. Then what you've got there is you've got the crook of the leg. There you go, to coming out there. But bearing in mind this is only about 0.3. And then you've got another one which should add up to around about 1.65 meters. So, but bearing in mind this is a sonar image, don't expect it to be 1 to the millimeter. Please bear that in mind. But it's very accurate. Now, what we're doing, we're looking for a lady who's missing in an area of the bench. This is 75 meters down from the bench. I searched the lower part of the river over the weir. There was no sign, and so did the police. There was nothing down there. The river's too shallow, and if Nicola had been down there, she would have been found at the beginning, because as the tide goes out, as it ebbs out, it gets extremely shallow. And even if she was in the reeds, the human remains dogs would have found her down there. There's no way, because on day one she could have got over that weir, because it would be impossible to get over the weir without an extreme high tide coming up over the weir, which we'll talk about. So we can measure. So that's the one good thing. The chance of a tree branch looking like a body within 75 meters of the bench in the hot zone in the same dimensions as Nicola is impossible. And what we've got to bear in mind, this is within 75 metres where Nicola went missing. Now, another great tool on this, we've got various ones. We can actually take the shadow, if you look at it now, and we can actually reverse it. We can actually take the shadow away, and we can see the clear shadow, what's creating that. Obviously, the higher the sonar image, the shorter the shadow, and so on. It's a bit like standing a torch behind you at night. Try it, get a lamp, crouch down on the floor and watch the shape and length of the shadows get longer and shorter. It's exactly the same principle. I'm going to put that shadow back now. I'm going to do an interesting sort of experiment here. I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to play with colours. What I said, there's lots of things. Now, bearing in mind, the experts never had access to any of this data. They've never seen it, never asked for it. And I'd like to know who them experts were. We need to find out who they are. So if we're going to go down, I quite like the pink colour, to be honest, when I'm looking at this. And if I apply that, now let's give us a nice clear image. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put the area tool. I like the area tool. It's a really cool bit of kit. So now bearing in mind, I've got a mouse. It's not a stencil. It's not a pen I'm using or a proper mouse. This is on my laptop. So I'm just going to start clicking around the shape of what we've got here. Just watch this. Just to give you an idea of what we can do. It's a slow process. Now, please bear with me. I'm not an artist. I'm just showing you the shape. I'm following, with my expertise, the shape of what we've got on the sonar image, the shadow. Okay, and I'm clearing, going around there. I'm just going to follow it up. Just going to take it up around the shape of what we've got here. What you can clearly see. There we go. I'm going to take it in there. And we're going up to where the shoulder is. I'm going to take up the shoulder, the arms. There we go. Just a rough sketch around. It's all I need to be. I don't need to be an artist to do this. I just need to be accurate as I can, bearing in mind I'm clicking around this with a mouse, not a paintbrush or anything like that. So there we go, we do that. But this is the magic. Then I just double click. Now, if you look at that shape, if you look at the crime pictures you see on TV, you know, Kojak films, when they chalk around a body, I can get closer than that. I can get a lot more accurate than that, and I've done that previously when I've had lots of time to do this. But if you look at that, that does not look like a tree branch. That does not look like nothing, but that looks like a human body laying in a prone position on its right side. And as I've said before, I strongly believe this is the body of Nicola Bulley.
So the area around the bench was searched 3 times, and the 3rd time was in response, direct response to the report of his suspicions.
The College of Policing's own review describes police divers searching the water in front of the bench on January 27th, January 30th, January 31st, February 1st, February 2nd, and again on February 7th after Peter Faulding's sonar find. 6 separate dives, 5 of them before SGI arrived. That means their public account underreports the true number of dives by at least half. Whether this is a case of compressing multiple dives into fewer search events for simplicity, or a selective presentation of the record, the difference is significant. The review's own detailed timeline contradicts the official soundbite, raising questions about how the search effort has been portrayed.
You'll see the shallowness of the water in the picture in certain areas. So again, if a body had gone in that water, the body couldn't have got past these shallows. Impossible, with no flow on the water. So you can see there, you can see the corner where the bench was. You can see the top right hand picture shows the depth of the water at the bottom of the bank. And the bottom right-hand picture shows as you go around the bend towards the weir down from the bench, she couldn't have got past there. The water's not moving, so absolutely impossible. And on the day, I've spoke to many witnesses, they said the water was hardly any different on that particular day as well.
Police divers had repeatedly searched the stretch of the River Wyre from the bench area to Nicola Bulley's eventual recovery location, yet found nothing on multiple occasions. According to the police's own narrative, if Nicola had entered the water at the bench and never left it, she could not have been anywhere else but along that searched section, meaning she must have been in an area they had already examined. This raises the logical question. If she was missed in those earlier sweeps, is it not equally plausible that she was missed again on February 7th, even when Peter Faulding's sonar suggested a potential target? The only other possibility is that she was not yet in the water.
And there was a video done by a police officer. Again, this is meant to be independent, and it was one of the divers, PC Thackeray, put a video out, and it was one-dimensional, so it was filmed from a GoPro, and he said Nicola would have fallen into this water that's moving at this speed, and he was paddling himself down the river. And bearing in mind, he's alive and he's in a dry suit, so it's acting like a life jacket. So he's floating. Dead bodies do not float. I can tell you that now. And he's paddling himself down the river, forcing himself to move along. And I remember him saying that where I found the anomaly, which I believe to be Nicola, he said we searched up river, but near the bench. On another day, we searched further down, and then we searched up to this island. And I think on a subsequent day, I think you don't think you know if you've searched an area. We search further down. But there's another part of this which I forgot to mention. What I need to mention is because eventually Nicola was found in the tidal section, in the river, by a member of the public or a guy called Jason Rothwell. That was where she was originally found. So you've got to think about, you've got an upper area of benign river, non-tidal, and then it goes over a weir. Now, even if she'd gone over the weir the first day, there's a pile of rocks the other side of the weir. She would have landed on the weir. So in the College of Policing report, they say they took advice from experts. Now, Nicola was laying there by the island. And again, there's no exact science when a body bloats. So it depends on there's no exact science anywhere. So it depends what clothing, your body makeup, your body fat and everything else. We dealt with a body in Thames Valley that took 3 months to surface. So it can vary. Some can come up within 6 days, and it depends on water temperature. So Nicola was laying there, and it says this in the College of Policing report. They said on the 18th and 19th, we took advice from the experts around water flow, and they suggested around that time would be the time the body would float when there was a exceptionally high tide, which obviously a spring tide, comes up over the weir, flooded the top section of the river. And they said when it flooded over the weir would have lifted her body. In other words, they probably knew where she was there, and that was how she got in. So where she was laying, 75 meters from the bench, where I've said, where you can see her clearly, the water has flowed up over the weir, and it's in the College and Policing report. Can't remember the page, and it's flooded the top section of the river. So it's pushed, it's come in, it's picked her body up. She's slightly buoyant because she's decomposed. She's then been carried down the river. You remember the shallows I showed you earlier. Normally she wouldn't get past them, but now the river's probably risen by a few feet, and it's carried her body during the night up over the weir, washed it into the lower section of the river, and that's where Jason Rothwell has now seen her.
And we did find, and I think this is very important, as the Commissioner said in his opening comments, that nothing could have been done that we saw that would have led to Nicola's body being found sooner.
So yeah, my name is Neil McDonough. I'm a scuba diving instructor, technical rescue specialist, water safety provider, and a side scan sonar operator also. I worked quite a lot with teams across the UK, including England, Wales, Scotland, with search and rescue teams, both voluntary, providing water safety support for search and rescue operations for a number of years. And over recent years have stepped into the role of being a specialist sonar operator, operating side sonar equipment for the same teams.
What is your opinion on why Nicola was not found immediately?
For me, time is critical. So it's about getting the right resource and the right mix of resource on scene with the right skills and technologies. So we are very fortunate in the UK that we have a great volunteer search and rescue teams, which I spoke about in the past, which have access to very highly trained personnel and good technical rescue expertise. But what lacks at the moment, I think, is the time and speed, particularly in fast-moving water courses, to get subsurface teams on scene and essentially review or scan, in this case, the subsurface area. Initial searches that I've been involved in the past tend to focus again on the surface. In my humble opinion and my professional opinion, there needs to be more focus subsurface, absolutely, which I think may have prolonged certainly the time it's taking to recover. There's also the limitations in terms of technology. Now, again, I can't speak specifically for the teams which were on site for this search, but limitations in terms of technology or lack of it early on in the search. So what type of technology are being used? And I'm not just talking about the likes of side scan sonar here, I'm talking about a multitude of resources. So I've mentioned the bank searches, which would be covering areas that boat teams may not be able to see. I mentioned sonar. We also work with canines or cadaver dogs, which are very highly specialized dogs which detect drowning victims and often clear areas very, very quickly by being placed onto a boat. And I think having all of that technology and that capability on scene quickly and at the right times and the right numbers is critical to ensuring hopefully a quick resolution, which is what everyone would want. But making sure that mix of resources and that skill set is the right skill set, because too much, and it's a case of too many cooks sometimes, can spoil the broth. But in this case, I know there are a multitude of teams, but was it the right resource? I don't know. I'm sure there is room for improvement.
One option never fully explored was containment nets. These could have been stretched across key points of the Wyre, above the weir, near bends, and at choke points, turning the river into controlled search sectors. Just as a land grid search clears terrain methodically, river nets ensure nothing drifts past each line. Experts even advised police that the high tide on February 18th and 19th would be critical. Nets could have been installed in advance, monitored, and almost certainly would have meant that the police, not Jason Rothwell, a psychic, found Nicola first. This approach isn't hypothetical. It's outlined in Swiftwater Body Recovery, a 2018 publication by Dr. Steve Glassy, written while he was an associate lecturer at the University of Lancashire. By contrast, the absence of containment on the Wyre left the search wide open. It fueled speculation, created doubt, and ironically, gave investigators a buffer. With no nets, mistakes blurred into the natural complexity of the river. Had containment been used, the search might have been shorter, cleaner, and far less controversial.
Backwards and forwards, but there was no sign of any anomaly in that river anywhere. The only anomaly we got was measuring exactly the same size as Nicola Bulley, with the head, the back, the arms, the legs, was 75 metres from the bench.
Back in May 2016, the family of 16-year-old Ellis Downs faced the same nightmare Nicola Bulley's family would later endure, watching a loved one vanish into a river. Thames Valley Police had no in-house dive unit. It had been disbanded 2 years earlier. They were waiting on Met Police divers citing poor visibility as the reason operations stalled. No sonar searches were deployed in those critical first days. Frustrated, Ellis's family turned to Specialist Group International. On May 9th, SGI arrived and deployed their own divers to the exact last seen area. In pitch black water, using only fingertip grid searches, they located and recovered Ellis's body within 40 minutes of entering the water. What the police could not achieve in 3 days, SGI achieved in less than an hour. This recovery drew national attention, not only for the tragedy, but for what it revealed: a capability gap. Thames Valley Police had no immediate underwater search resource. SGI had filled that void. Fast forward to 2023 and the Nicola Bulley case. SGI were called in once again, but in the aftermath of the controversy, their services were pulled from Thames Valley Police and 5 other forces. That decision effectively left large areas of the UK without any readily available underwater search capability. In the Ellis Downs case, SGI's presence delivered closure for the family in a matter of hours. Without them, a family may be left waiting days or longer for specialist divers to arrive. What if Peter Faulding and Specialist Group International had found Nicola Bulley during their water search? The answer isn't just a different headline. It's a complete reversal of the entire investigation narrative. Superintendent Becky Smith stated that the lead working hypothesis was that Nicola entered the river, but remained open-minded to 3 scenarios at the initial stages: entering the river, third-party involvement, or voluntary departure from the area.
At the initial stages, based on the information I received, I made it clear that it was my working hypothesis at that time, based with all the facts, that the main hypothesis I was working on at that time was that Nicola had gone in the river. I think it's clear to see that the amount of effort, hours worked, resources that we've put into this investigation, that we have always been open-minded. Those 3 hypotheses and scenarios have been continually reviewed and continue to do so to this day.
Their decision not to establish a crime scene contradicts this message. From the early days, Lancashire Police built their case around a single working theory. Nicola entered the water near the bench and remained in the River Wyre until she was recovered. That belief shaped the search, the media messaging, and crucially, the decision not to treat the bench and surrounding area as a potential crime scene.
With regards to the investigation, it was 3 days before a senior investigating officer was allocated to the case, so there was no preservation of the scene in terms of it being potentially forensically useful and all of that. They clearly, at a very, very early stage, made their minds up, no matter how much they've tried to row back from it by saying, now we've got an open mind. Way too late, and they got it really wrong.
That certainty was the foundation of the investigation, and that's exactly why SGI finding her quickly would have cracked it wide open. If SGI had found Nicola in a stretch of river police claim to have cleared, 2 devastating questions would have followed. Was she there all along and the police simply missed her? Or did she enter the water later than they believed? Either answer destroys the credibility of the official timeline and exposes the possibility that the investigation was built on faulty assumptions from day one. A fast recovery would have meant more intact forensic evidence: water exposure, decomposition rate, any injuries. If SGI had located her early, scientists could have tested whether the fall-in theory matched the physical evidence. That could have either confirmed or completely contradicted the police's working hypothesis. Missing that window closed off answers forever, and a quick SGI find would have highlighted exactly what was lost.
I would emphasise that it remains the case there is no evidence to indicate a criminal aspect or third-party involvement in Nicola's disappearance.
I am now going to take a closer look at why police locked onto their theory that Nicola entered the river voluntarily, and why each factor needs to be critically examined from a criminal investigation standpoint. Let's first take a look at what the College of Policing Independent Review had to say. On page 16 of the College of Policing Review, it states that a number of factors supported the hypothesis at this time that Nicola had entered the water. Nicola's last known position, the location of the dog harness, the position and activity of Nicola's mobile phone, the behavior of Nicola's dog, Nicola's medical history, and the low possibility of an exit by any land routes. First, Nicola's last known position. She was seen walking her dog near the bench on the River Wyre. Her phone and the dog's harness were found there, suggesting she had been at the water's edge before vanishing. But here are the issues. First, Nicola's place last seen was roughly 250 meters from the bench. Last known position can be indicated by personal items or environmental disturbances, but is almost always circumstantial. All search and rescue teams know this. Second, the last known position is a starting point, not a conclusion. It establishes where she was, not why she disappeared. A criminal approach would have preserved this as a possible abduction or struggle site from minute one. Instead, the scene wasn't secured, weakening any potential forensic evidence. Second, the dog harness. It was found near the bench, leading police to believe it had been calmly removed or slipped off accidentally. But harness location alone can't rule out foul play. A perpetrator could have staged it. From a forensic perspective, the harness should have been treated as trace evidence, tested for DNA, fibers, and transfer patterns. Instead, its placement became circumstantial proof of an accident. Next, the phone. It was left on the bench, still connected to a work team's call. Police assume that meant a calm, voluntary moment. But a phone left behind can signal many scenarios: accident, abduction, even staging. A criminal investigation would treat it as neutral evidence until examined for prints, environmental trace, and bench disturbance. Without an immediate cordon, its placement and location data tells us little, except for suggesting Nicola's last known position. Then there's Willow's behavior. The dog was found dry and agitated, but off lead near the bench. Police took that as a sign Nicola may have entered the water while Willow stayed back. But animal behavior isn't evidence. Without consulting a canine behavioral expert, these conclusions were assumptions. A dry dog could just as easily suggest a sudden disappearance or an abduction where the dog had no chance to react. I have a husky and a pointer. My husky would have jumped in the water after me, and my pointer would have ran after squirrels. Lancashire police also cited Nicola's specific vulnerabilities to support the theory of accidental or intentional entry into the river. These vulnerabilities have nothing to do with accidental drowning, which was the coroner's findings, and studies are mixed regarding self-harm scenarios. But this risked confirmation bias. Personal history shouldn't outweigh physical evidence at the scene. In this case, there was no direct forensic link between her vulnerabilities and the riverbank. It's a classic example of narrative leading evidence instead of evidence leading the narrative. Finally, the low possibility of an exit by any land routes. Let's first hear what Mark had to say.
Is the police have said it is unlikely, and their theory is that she hasn't left the area. But let's be very clear about that. It is impossible to say that. And I'll tell you why. Because the route in, which is across the bridge from where she left her car, down the path and through this gate here, is exactly the same route that she could have taken out of here, because there is no CCTV on any of this route. She could have left here, either her own free will, and got into perhaps a car, someone supporting her, or left on her own free will, and she would not have been seen. So for the police to say with certainty that she hasn't left the area is absolutely wrong.
Setting aside the possibility of quite easily leaving the area voluntarily and unnoticed, if foul play had been involved, offenders rarely walk lone female joggers and dog walkers out the front door. The absence of evidence of a third party No witnesses to an abduction, no CCTV of suspicious activity. Police concluded foul play was unlikely. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Rural outdoor environments rarely preserve signs of a struggle unless they're secured immediately. CCTV blind spots left significant gaps in the timeline, and there was an approximately 23-minute window from when Nicola was last seen until Willow was found at the bench. Dismissing criminal involvement this early was premature. All of these factors were treated as proof of an accident, but from a criminal investigation standpoint, they were ambiguous at best. The biggest issue? Investigators interpreted evidence to fit their theory instead of testing their theory against the evidence.
I'm finding this all very odd and slightly concerning because the first 24 hours are absolutely crucial to a case like this. Yeah. And the second is to keep an open mind. And to hear the police say that this is a tragic accident, on what we've got in the public domain at the moment, I cannot understand that statement. With Nicola, there's 7 different hypotheses. Only one of them is she fell in the river. So I am very confused by this, and I feel for the family because you try and keep the publicity up, you try and keep hope up by exploring every angle, every line of inquiry. And what the police need to do now is explain why they've shut 8 of those 6 out of those 7 nights of inquiry down. I cannot believe that you've got senior officers saying this is clearly a tragic accident. There is a lot to suggest this could have been an unexpected attack or a kidnap of a lady distracted on her phone and with a dog. And don't forget, the dog was found dry and out of its harness, both of which are unusual if she's fallen in the river. I have dogs. If I fell in the river, my dogs would jump in with me.
Now, imagine for a moment that the conclusion in the Nicola Bulley case was not accidental drowning, but murder. Now ask yourself, what would have happened to the police investigation and to the people in charge? From the very beginning, the investigation was built around one assumption, that Nicola had fallen into the river. The bench, her phone, her dog, everything was interpreted through that single lens. But in a homicide scenario, that early decision would become catastrophic. The moment a murder determination was announced, the headlines would write themselves. The bench and surrounding fields were never secured. Civilians and officers walked through what would now be a potential crime scene. Any trace evidence gone in the first 24 hours. The fallout inside Lancashire Constabulary would be brutal. Resignations and forced removals would follow. The public outrage would be unprecedented. In a case that had already captured national attention, the idea that a killer walked free while police searched the wrong place would destroy trust. Nicola's family would almost certainly sue the force for negligence, and every future missing persons case would be viewed through this lens of failure. One thing the public rarely sees is what happens behind the scenes when an investigation starts to lock onto a single theory. When tunnel vision sets in, the ripple effect reaches everyone: the family, detectives, analysts, and even search teams on the ground. It's in these moments that consultants like me are sometimes contacted. In this case, the family contacted both Peter Faulding and Mark Williams-Thomas for their expertise and insight.
So my name is Mark Williams-Thomas. I'm a former police detective and I'm now an investigator, and I work across lots of cases reviewing murder investigations, disappearances, and that's what's brought me here. I've been in contact with the family and they've specifically asked me, very gratefully, if I could come up and have a look. And Peter Faulding is a very close friend of mine and we've worked very closely together over the last few days.
I've had officers and searchers reach out, not through official channels, but in whispers, with the understanding that if their superiors ever found out, their careers could be on the line. They aren't trying to subvert the investigation. They're trying to safeguard it. I won't name cases and I won't name individuals, but I will say this. In at least one investigation that received significant public attention, someone inside reached out, not to challenge their team, but to bring in an outside perspective before critical opportunities were lost. When pressure mounts and a single narrative begins to dominate, those calls aren't about ego or blame. They're about ensuring the investigation maintains its objectivity. It's never about taking control. It's about adding clarity where uncertainty exists. These conversations are never public, and they never will be, but they serve as a reminder. Even in the most scrutinized investigations, there are people inside willing to put everything on the line to get it right.
And then, and this was the next interesting bit, I then got a call from Sky News to say to me, we've been asked to go to a news conference prior to the release of the College of Policing report that's due out. They actually briefed the media to say that Peter Faulding will claim, now bearing in mind this is from many people told me this, Peter Faulding will claim that he found Nicola in the river.
From a Freedom of Information document dated 26 January 2024, we now know that just before the publication of the College of Policing's independent review, a private press briefing was held. During this session, journalists were shown 2 sonar scan images said to relate to the Nicola Bulley case. These slides were displayed on a strictly non-reportable basis. Reporters were instructed not to take photos or screenshots. The press was told that Peter Faulding would later claim these images showed Nicola Bulley underwater. Yet the images themselves were never made public. The College of Policing refused to release them under Freedom of Information, citing Section 38 of the Act, which protects against disclosure likely to cause harm or distress. The review team specifically noted that publishing these sonar images could cause undue distress to Nicola's family. Instead, they allowed only this controlled, non-reportable showing to members of the press. This means journalists had access to material that Nicola's own family never saw released publicly, and the wider public was kept in the dark. This wasn't just about briefing the media. It was about shaping the story before the review was even released. By showing journalists sonar images and hinting that Peter Faulding would insist they showed Nicola underwater, the press was deliberately positioned to see him as the likely scapegoat.
Hi, Adrian from National World. The report is highly critical of independent dive expert Peter Faulding, who appears forced his way into the centre of the investigation and caused ultimately inevitable distress to the family. How on earth was that allowed to happen, and what will be done in future to prevent this kind of individual from disrupting the investigation in this way?
So I'd make a mild correction, if I might, to your opening statement. So we're not highly critical. We factually lay out the impact of that independent dive expert in the search.
Framing Peter as the convenient scapegoat wasn't left to chance. Behind the scenes, the College of Policing also moved to formally prepare for the fallout. Less than 3 weeks before the review was made public, Peter Faulding received a letter that gave him virtually no time to respond. In that letter, the review team acknowledged that police divers had searched the anomaly flagged in Peter's sonar image and found nothing. Government and academic experts also reviewed the scans and judged them to have a very low certainty of being a human body. Yet, the same letter admitted that Nicola's family had been shown the images and that they were quite upset by them. If the images were, as later described, simply tree branches or nothing, why would they have caused the family such distress? The letter also made clear that its purpose was to alert Peter to criticism that could be inferred from the review's publication. It stated, "The review team does not directly criticize your actions, but others may infer criticism." But when you turn to the review itself, the contradictions are obvious. So while the letter gave him a token opportunity to respond, the timing ensured he could not meaningfully correct the record before the review was published. In practice, he was notified too late to defend himself, while the review's criticisms became the public story.
I've been doing this an awful long time, and that's why I get called in by the police, and that's why we're highly credible. But this operation was a first class, I would say in English language, first class stitch up to I become the single point of blame. As Laura Richards said, I become the fall guy for this whole operation.
Today we'll see the publication of the College of Policing's review into our handling of the Nicola Bulley missing person investigation. First and foremost, on behalf of myself and the constabulary, I want to say that our thoughts are with Nicky's family at what must be a very difficult time. I hope by reading that report that Nicola's family can see that we did everything we could do to bring Nicola home to them. The report highlights excellent practice when it comes to the response to the incident, to the investigation, to the searches, and to the support that was given to Nicola's family. It also highlights the competence, the compassion, and the commitment of our staff involved in this extensive inquiry.
When you read through the College of Policing's review, one detail stands out immediately. Peter Faulding wasn't just mentioned in passing, he had an entire section dedicated solely to him. Across the review, Faulding's name appears 58 times, and his company, Specialist Group International, is referenced another 30 times. Think about that. In a national review that was supposed to assess an entire police investigation, one independent diver and his team were singled out again and again. The sheer volume of references shows just how much the narrative revolved around Faulding, raising serious questions about whether he was being evaluated or scapegoated. And that focus on Peter Faulding doesn't stop with how often his name appears. It goes deeper. The review specifically pulled in his sonar imagery, the very PDF stills he provided to police. But instead of considering the live data, unnamed experts were asked to judge those frozen images after the fact. Their conclusion? That it was unlikely the target was a body. Yet that judgment came without context, without the live sonar feed, and from experts who remain anonymous.
So to analyze sonar data, you have to have live sonar data recorded, which is recorded on my rugged laptops. No so-called experts, and I want to make this very clear, nameless experts have never ever seen the live data. There needs to be a full inquiry here as to why that evidence wasn't looked at. And like I said, the important bit here, Doug, is even if it wasn't Nicola, why was the data not looked at, and who are these experts? Because I would love to meet these experts in a court of law, and I would love to put my experience against them and say, you tell me why that is a body, because all they've looked at is a PDF image on a piece of paper that I emailed to them, and they've made a judgment, and this is the key here. They have made the judgment on a PDF image. If I can guarantee you now, I said all along in my statement that I released, I will go in front of any expert and I will go in front of any witness in any court of law and challenge them experts. And you tell me what evidence you went on when you looked at that evidence from a PDF image. You tell me how you can measure a PDF on sonar when you don't even know what frequency is being used, what swathe length has been used. You've got no idea of the length of that target, and you've made a judgment for one of the biggest high-profile cases in the UK. And quite frankly, you've made yourselves look stupid because you're not experts.
Can a sonar target be confidently and credibly identified by a PDF image alone, or does it require the live data with specialist software to identify it positively?
In my opinion, it cannot be credibly warranted unless the live data has been provided.
It leaves us asking, was this a genuine technical assessment or a convenient way to downplay Faulding's evidence? And that's really the key point. Sonar is only as reliable as the expertise behind it. It's not just about the equipment, but about the skill in interpreting the live feed and knowing what you're looking at. To explore that further, I asked Neil to talk about just how critical operator experience is when it comes to sonar searches and imagery. In your experience using side scan sonar, how important is the expertise? Not both on using the actual equipment itself, but also the expertise in being able to read the imagery, the data output.
Yeah, again, it's a great question, Doug. And sonars are only as good as their operators. You know, as soon as you throw a human element into the equation, then there is a concern where that something is either going to get misread or missed. But from my experience, expertise in side scan sonar, and particularly the interpretation of those returns on the screen, it's absolutely critical, particularly in the light of search and rescue, recovery operations, evidence operations. What an untrained eye would see compared to what a trained eye would see may vary significantly. And what I mean by that is that sonar images can be ambiguous at times. Without the necessary experience, training, which is really, really important, and CPD, so continuous development on utilizing this equipment, things that may appear as targets or objects such as debris, noise, or anything else may be misinterpreted as a real target, or indeed missed altogether.
Neil's insight really underlines the problem. Technology without expertise can mislead more than it helps. And that brings us back to the Cranfield University expert who reviewed Faulding sonar images. His assessment was careful. He said the target could not be positively identified based on the data presented. That wording matters because it points to the real limitation. Without access to the live feed, even an academic expert couldn't fully judge what Faulding sonar had detected. But here's the problem. The very next part of that statement, whatever nuance or context it contained, was cut from the public report.
And after, I pioneered the use of sonar in the UK in 1999. I brought it over from the States and I literally pioneered its use. So I probably the leader in the field in the UK on side scan sonar. I'm not talking about Navy, I'm talking about in forensic search. I was the first ever to use it for forensic search in the UK. And with all of my experience, that is without doubt the body of Nicola Bulley laying on the bottom.
If sonar imagery or data is going to be reviewed in a forensic search scenario, would you want somebody that specializes in that application of sonar to review it?
They need to, one, have experience working in forensic cases, and secondly, they need to be able to utilize the live data to attest what their synopsis or their conclusion is. And I would always recommend that is done before any assumptions are made. And I would like to see anyone who makes a conclusion on some information, one, to name themselves and their experience and their background in utilizing this equipment, but more importantly, clearly stating any assumptions and the level of information that has been used, whether that is a static image or it's the live data, is absolutely critical, because without that, you can't really credibly give information as to what you're looking at, whether it is credible or not.
When the College of Policing Review refers to independent experts, it never defines who these individuals are or what their expertise in sonar actually is. Were they specialists in military sonar applications, marine biology, or fisheries in the animal world? Each of those fields uses sonar differently with very different training and objectives. Without clarity, the term expert becomes vague. An expert in whale migration, for example, may not have the operational experience to interpret side-scan sonar imagery in a fast-moving river. And an academic familiar with naval sonar systems may not understand the nuances of search and recovery operations. Without knowing what kind of sonar expertise these anonymous reviewers actually had, we can't be sure their assessments reflect the realities of search and rescue operations. That's why it's so valuable to hear from Neil, who has worked with the very same type of sonar equipment for the same purpose of locating missing persons. He's going to walk us through how Peter's live sonar data would have been interpreted in the field. So Neil, here is the live data that Peter Faulding provided me, and this is from the search for Nicola Bulley. Do you mind just walking us through what we are seeing here as a general audience, as somebody who's never seen side scan sonar before?
Yeah, absolutely. So the yellow line in the center shows the track of the vessel, in this case the boat. On the left and the right, you have your port and starboard sides of the sonar imagery. And then what I'm looking for at either side of this imagery is two things. One, I'm looking for distinct shadows. Nothing is popping for me at the moment. But the sound waves across the top of the screen and the green and the red there, in the event of a target being identified, there will be a flat spot. And that is a clear indication that there is something there which maybe shouldn't be, or something that stands out for us. Okay, so there is a real interesting shadow coming up at the moment. So if we can just pause the screen there, Doug, if you wouldn't mind, please. So on the left-hand side, or in this case, the port side of the vessel, there is quite a prolonged large shadow, which is an unusual shape. That isn't what I would naturally see with natural features, so tree branches or any kind of vegetation. Would that be potentially a human body? Does it have representation of a human body? Am I seeing things like limbs? Am I seeing a human form? Quite possibly. Obviously, now that we've got the live footage, it's really accurate with the software that would be available to me at this time to determine size of that object. So I could put a line on that and measure it. If that matched the height of the individual which we were looking for, then it would quite possibly almost undoubtedly be a credible target for me. The other thing I'm seeing, which is becoming more apparent, and unfortunately I don't have access to Zoom at the moment, I'm not sure if it's anything that you've got, but I'm seeing what would appear, I would zoom in and maybe change the frequency in the background color, but I'm seeing starting at the furthest south point, I'm seeing what looks like to be a buttocks heading up to a lower back, heading up to what looks to be almost a torso. Head is very vague, but I'm maybe seeing the front of the head, which is coming to view for me at the moment. But then as I look more closely, and again, this is maybe where a color palette change would be supportive to define this even further, I'm seeing legs in almost a crouched or a semi-crouched position. It would certainly, in my experience from recovering multiple bodies, it would certainly appear to take the shape of human form. But if we could possibly change the color palette just to see if we could make that image stand out, fantastic. So this would be very similar to what I would be doing both on the boat and following the initial search. Again, there is the clear shadow, that the shadow's not removed, fantastic. But that form that I'm seeing, starting off where you are with the head and moving down the lower back at the moment onto the buttocks, and then moving around onto the thighs, and then down towards, not quite as visible, but certainly apparent, what look to be the legs. Yeah, so it looks like the operator at the moment is doing an outline of what they are seeing. So we are coming to the front of the torso at the moment, heading up to the arms. Again, not really as clear, but certainly something is outstretched, which will be indicative of the arms, and then leading up to what appears to be the head, exactly as the operator has done there. It's the same practice, standard practice that certainly I would utilize and my team would utilize. Yeah, it's a credible target as far as I'm concerned. I guess the next steps in this would be that we would expect a subsurface team maybe a diver to go in and review this, and again confirm this target. But absolutely, in my mind, and based on the evidence and the information I've got in front of me at this point in time, that certainly appears to take the form of a human.
Now, looking at the live data of the anomaly Peter claims to be Nicola, what is your expert opinion in detail?
Yeah, so I think in detail, on multiple passes, on looking at the imagery, on changing the color palette, all of the key things that I would expect to see, both in terms of the shadow, in terms of the shape, the size of the object, or the target, and the density, which is represented by the bright yellow stroke white color that we're seeing on the screen at the moment. All of those things are ticking for me, and this is a mental process I go through sometimes in a matter of seconds as I'm reviewing an image. Any 4 or 5 of those key parameters that tick or raise a green light for me would be certainly a target that I would say, look, this something's not right here. It needs further investigation. But based on my years of experience with being firstly trained in this technology and having operated in a live environment, that is representative to me of being human form. Yeah.
Can I go back to Peter Faulding? He says now that within 6 minutes of his first search around the bench area, that he found the body. He showed you his sonar images. What's your response to that?
So the area around the bench was searched 3 times, and the 3rd time was in response, direct response to the report of his suspicions. We have shown as part of the review the images of Peter Faulding's images from that area at that time, and 2 independent experts have said that it's unlikely that was a body. So I don't think there's credibility to that claim.
Unlikely, but you can't.
Highly unlikely. It's in the report.
Are there any other questions?
I mean, I do think it's important to clarify this. The area was searched immediately after that report, and there was nothing there.
Can a sonar target be nothing? And can you have a shadow if nothing is there?
So I think to answer that question, a shadow on a sonar means there's an area where the sonar has not returned a signal, or it didn't bounce back to the towfish in this case. The reason for that, the sound waves have been blocked by an object. So the blocked area will then show up a target as a shadow. The presence of that shadow, in turn, will indicate that there's something there. It's very rare, well, in fact, unheard of. A shadow means that something's there. It's a law of physics. So, no, absolutely not. So, can a sonar target be nothing? It can be absolutely not be a live target, or it cannot be a person. It might be something else. But a target and a sonar image means that something is categorically there without a shadow of a doubt.
Rather than confronting their own failings, Lancashire Police and the review redirected scrutiny onto Faulding. The NDA that never existed, the fabricated in-person briefing with the police search advisor, the claim that Faulding told Nicola's family he had found a body deposition site. These all created a record that painted him as unreliable. Nowhere was the scapegoating clearer than with Faulding's sonar find. On February 7th, his equipment flagged a promising target in the hot zone. Police dismissed it, and the review later reduced it to mere tree branches, or nothing. They're not quite sure. But by denying the significance of that anomaly, Faulding wasn't credited for raising the lead. He was painted as the man who misled. The find itself became the tool to make him the scapegoat. The consequences went even further. Following the inquiry, Faulding was struck off the National Crime Agency's list of approved experts.
We, at the earliest stage of recognising there were issues around the drawdown of expert advisors on a list held by the National Crime Agency, we escalated that concern to the head of the National Crime Agency, who's undertaking a review. I understand that that dive expert is no longer on the NCA list of expert advisors.
Officially, the statement claimed he had been on the NCA list since 2008, but that too was inaccurate. Peter was first placed on the database back in 2001 when Mark Harrison was around, but in those days it wasn't the NCA list, it was the National Crime Faculty, or NCF. Then it changed to the National Crime and Operations Faculty, then the Serious Organized Crime Agency, and eventually it became the NCA. So in the review, it said he was on the NCA list since 2008. That was wrong. That clarification shows his removal erased over 2 decades of recognized service across every iteration of the UK's national policing expert system. For a man who had built a career assisting police in high-risk searches, this wasn't just reputational damage, it was professional exile. We will now hear from Dr. Mark Harrison, who will share his expertise and insight and shed light on why Peter Faulding has been in the expert database since 2001.
So yes, Mark Harrison, you're probably picking up from my accent. I grew up in Great Britain, although I currently reside in Australia. I've had 35 years law enforcement and intelligence agency experience, but most of that has really been focused in the areas of a thing called geoforensics, which we'll probably explore in a moment, and also in intelligence. And I've really applied those that skill and knowledge to searching for those that are missing, be they missing in non-suspicious or suspicious circumstances, such as homicide. I've worked throughout the world, predominantly in the Western world, but also somewhat in Southeast Asia. And if your listeners are predominantly from the United States, I've worked extensively in the United States and with the colleagues in the FBI and the state police as well on some really interesting cases over the years. So Peter Faulding I've known for many years, a couple of decades now. I suppose my first introduction to Peter was when I was appointed by the British Police Service as their first national search advisor. Peter is renowned and leads in 2 areas. He leads in the areas of marine search and marine sonar, but also helping to recover environmental protesters that may have, locked themselves onto certain areas or certain platforms, and the police wouldn't have the necessary skills to extricate them safely. So Peter and his colleagues in the company would fulfil that role. So that's how I became to know Mr. Faulding and Specialist Group International.
One of the clearest themes running through the College of Policing Review is an effort to downplay the role of Specialist Group International. The document repeatedly stresses that the police already had all the tools they needed, stating that further support was not required and that the dive team had appropriate sonar equipment. Yet, if that was truly the case, why did the police suddenly acquire superior sonar technology on February 8th, just one day after Peter Faulding detected his target? And to this day, none of the police sonar imagery from the search for Nicola has ever been made public. Let's now hear from Dr. Harrison about how SGI can in fact augment police capabilities, bringing added layers of specialist expertise and technology that strengthen rather than replace what law enforcement can provide on their own.
Where SGI is concerned, clearly they are able to augment the services that exist within the police service. And as they are a private company that have a national coverage, they've been able to invest in technology and equipment and also experienced personnel that some other more regional police dive teams wouldn't necessarily have the funds or the equipment in order to do the level of searching that SGI would potentially be capable of.
Now that Dr. Harrison has outlined how SGI can augment police capabilities, it's important to look at the other side of the equation. In this high-profile search, SGI were left to operate largely on their own, without the structures, oversight, and support that should have been in place. Let's turn to the challenges they faced working independently, beginning with one of the most overlooked failures, the absence of a press officer. With no one on scene managing the media, journalists roamed the riverside freely, risking contamination of what could have been a crime scene. This lack of oversight created pressure on both Nicola's family and Specialist Group International, who were left to navigate the media spotlight without professional guidance.
And his interactions with the media weren't coordinated with constabulary media releases, and it certainly led to complications and challenges for the force.
The College of Policing review makes clear how damaging this vacuum was. As news media, we needed more communication from the police. A vacuum was created, in which stepped the social media commentators, family members, and friends. It would have been very helpful if there had been a press officer at the bench, where family and friends were essentially holding daily informal press briefings. In the vacuum, the family friend became the press officer. The same review also noted that a void in the media reporting had been created and was being filled outside of policing, notably by Mr. Faulding. A suitable representative from Lancashire Constabulary with the necessary search expertise and media training could not be identified. This statement is just to save face. Lancashire Constabulary could have easily assigned a two-person team made up of a press officer and a search expert. Instead, they left Faulding to update the press on search efforts and then criticized him for doing so because it didn't fit their narrative.
Everywhere I went, I had a camera in my face. Whatever I did.
I remember that.
It was awful. I've got pictures, and my team were just saying, Pete, there's nothing you can do here. I was just surrounded by them all the time. Every time I got out of the boat, the cameras would be there. How have you got on today? And you just going, I'm tired, I'm cold. You know, we're working in February. My hands were freezing cold. And you've been out on the boat, not moving all day, just drinking tea while you're looking at the sonar screen.
SGI was not brought in by the police, was not working for the police, and never signed an NDA. They were left to communicate not only their own efforts to the public, but those of the police as well. This was not just a lapse in communication, it was a critical failure that undermined the investigation, fueled speculation, and left Nicola's loved ones exposed at the very moment they most needed professional support. The absence of a press officer not only left Nicola's family and SGI exposed, it also opened the door to unchecked speculation and mounting media pressure. That pressure would soon intensify further when headlines emerged suggesting that SGI had identified a possible body deposition site along the riverbank. Let's look at how this event was handled by police on scene and how it was later documented in the College of Policing review. One of the most damaging allegations to come out of the College of Policing review was the claim that Peter Faulding told Nicola Bulley's family he had discovered a body deposition site. But that's not what happened. While searching the riverbank, Peter noticed reeds stacked against a tree stump and a small depression in the ground, features that, in his training, should be flagged for closer examination. He recommended the area be checked. Instead, officers told him to fill it back in and move on. Because the shoreline was never declared a crime scene, there was no obligation to preserve it. Months later, the review reframed this moment, suggesting Peter had told the family about a deposition site. He never did. What he actually said to two individuals was that he found a small hole near a stump that should be investigated. The hole you see here is far too small to be considered a body deposition site. This reframing not only undermined Peter's credibility, but also highlighted the risk of failing to secure and properly document potential evidence from the very first day. Having just looked at how the review framed the so-called stump as a potential body deposition site, let's move on to another example where the official account doesn't quite line up with what actually happened. Peter Faulding and SGI provided police divers with sonar imagery of the target near the island on February 7th. The review states that the dive team worked from the GPS coordinates provided by them, along with a marker that they had placed on the riverbank. Peter Faulding's team did place a stick on the riverbank as a discreet marker to guide police divers without drawing public or media attention, but they did not provide GPS coordinates on that day. The only time Specialist Group International sent GPS coordinates was much later, on October 27th, when Peter supplied them directly to the College of Policing for their review. This means that the college's report, published on November 21st, made a retrospective claim, suggesting GPS coordinates guided the February 7th dive, when in fact only the riverbank marker was used at the time. These may seem like minor discrepancies, but together they reveal something bigger. The review repeatedly presented details in ways that don't quite match the operational record. And when a high-profile case attracts national attention, those gaps aren't just clerical. They shape public perception, they affect how accountability is assigned, and they can shift blame away from institutions and onto individuals. It's here that the real issue emerges. Beyond the operational details, the Nicola Bulley case prompted questions about how Lancashire Constabulary handled oversight, communication, and leadership responsibility. And that brings us to the institutional changes and accountability measures that followed. The Nicola Bulley investigation drew huge public scrutiny, and the College of Policing review was openly critical of Lancashire Constabulary's handling of the case. In its wake, the force has seen sweeping leadership changes. Assistant Chief Constable Peter Lawson, who fronted press conferences during the search, died suddenly in December 2023, leaving a major gap in the force's leadership. Soon after, Chief Constable Chris Rowley announced his retirement for March 2024, just 3 years into the role. Though described as a personal decision, the timing so close to the review has fueled speculation. And Senior Investigating Officer Rebecca Smith, the face of the inquiry, also confirmed her retirement in March 2024 after 30 years of service. In just months, the 3 senior figures most tied to Nicola's case, Lawson, Rowley, and Smith, were gone. Officially framed as personal choices as well as a tragic death, their exits raise questions about how much the fallout from the case reshaped Lancashire Police. This is more than one investigation. It shows how high-profile cases can ripple through an entire force, altering public trust and the careers of those at the top.
There are also many areas of this case where Lancashire Constabulary represented the very best of policing, with the search and investigation being well resourced, professionally conducted, and calling upon national good practice.
Andrew Snowden, Lancashire's Police and Crime Commissioner, promised answers in the Nicola Bulley case. He commissioned the College of Policing to conduct an independent review. But when that review came back with false claims, disputed facts, and reputational damage, Snowden didn't challenge it, he accepted it. As PCC, Snowden is not a detective. His job is not to search rivers or direct investigations. His mandate is accountability. He is elected to hold Lancashire Constabulary to account, to represent the public, and to ensure transparency when confidence in policing is at risk. When criticism of the Bulley investigation reached boiling point, Snowden commissioned the College of Policing to step in and review how the case was handled. On paper, that was the right move, an independent assessment to restore trust. But when the College of Policing delivered its report, it wasn't the impartial document many expected. The review falsely claimed that Peter Faulding, head of Specialist Group International, signed an NDA with police. He didn't. It suggested briefings took place that never happened, and it misrepresented what private experts said and did during the search. These weren't minor errors. They were reputationally damaging, especially to Faulding and his team. And once published, those claims spread into headlines and public debate. Snowden had one responsibility: to scrutinize the review before endorsing it, to ask, are these claims accurate? Do they stand up to evidence? Could this unfairly damage trust in experts or mislead the public? Instead, Snowden accepted the review at face value. He stood at the press conference, presenting it as the authoritative account, despite its inaccuracies. He legitimized a flawed document, allowing misinformation to stand unchallenged. This is where the accountability gap opens wide. A PCC doesn't write the review, but they are the gatekeeper. They commission it, they frame it, and they decide how it is received publicly. By failing to question or correct its inaccuracies, Snowden effectively passed the responsibility back onto the very system he was meant to oversee. And in doing so, he failed to protect public trust in policing at the very moment it mattered most. Andrew Snowden's role as Police and Crime Commissioner highlights the political oversight of this case. But oversight only works if it's grounded in clear standards. That's where the College of Policing's own Code of Ethics comes in. The code isn't just a guideline on paper. It's meant to be the benchmark for honesty, integrity, accountability, and openness in policing. When you look at the College of Policing's Code of Ethics, it's clear where the priorities lie. The entire framework is designed to protect the reputation of the police service. Officers are told, don't undermine confidence in policing. Don't bring discredit on the force. The problem is that it doesn't extend that same protection to outsiders who work with the police. Private companies, volunteer specialists, experts, people like Peter Faulding and Specialist Group International. And that creates a dangerous imbalance. If something goes wrong, the code encourages the police to circle the wagons, to protect their own image first. The result is a bias in decision-making, a loss of objectivity, and most damaging of all, a door wide open to scapegoating. In the Nicola Bulley case, that's exactly what we saw. Faulding was brought in as a subject matter expert, then hung out to dry when the search went sideways. The police's reputation was preserved, his was sacrificed. The Code of Ethics was written to protect public trust, but when that protection only runs one way, it doesn't just hurt individuals, it damages trust in policing itself. The investigation and underwater search in the Nicola Bulley case were plagued by missed opportunities, under-resourced operations, poor leadership, and a narrative riddled with contradictions. Police maintained that they were open-minded and that their sonar and dive capabilities were suitable and appropriate, yet they failed to find Nicola in the hot zone, a section of river they had cleared, and the only place she could realistically have been. Peter Faulding became the focal point of public criticism, blamed for results that were never his to control. His anomaly find was dismissed, his credibility questioned, and his reputation tarnished. The College of Policing even went to great lengths to try and silence him prior to publicly releasing scathing criticism of his methods, findings, and intentions. When silencing him didn't work, they removed him from the NCA's list of experts and disrupted SGI's working relationships with law enforcement. Egos and careers were preserved at the expense of further lives being lost and people not being returned to their families. This review is the only case-specific report to ever be released by the College of Policing, and rather than internal accountability, much of the blame was redirected onto an underwater search expert who offered his time and company resources to find a missing woman and help a family in need.
Let me be very clear about Peter. Peter is a friend of mine. I've known Peter for a very long time. In fact, I was with him only last Thursday, at the launch of his book. He's come under a lot of criticism, wrongly so. Peter devotes his life to help people. I've worked with Peter on a number of investigations now, and on each and every occasion, Peter has been utterly professional, devoted himself with total sympathy to the families, and very often at no cost. He covers the cost himself. He has a permanent team on standby working with police forces up and down the country, and the criticism that's being given to him is utterly unfair. This is a man who's not he's not a television presenter. He's not there to give interviews. What he has tried to do is to support the family. He's gone up there to help the family at their request and worked very closely with the police. He is one of the best. He's got all the equipment, far better equipment than the police have, and that's just simply because of resources and the commitment that the police have put to particularly underwater searching over the last decade, really. Most police forces no longer have an underwater search facility, but he provides that. And up and down the country, he provides, predominantly in the south of England, but he provides that to police forces when they call him in to recover bodies from the water. So that criticism is it's unfair, and it's without any foundation at all. Peter has found himself under the spotlight, understandably so. He's gone up to a massive story, and of course he's going to be asked questions. But those people have been critical of him. I'd ask you to stand back and say, what have you done to help? Peter has put himself on the line. He's gone out there with his team at his own cost, and his people that work for him are brilliant. They're mainly all ex-military, but they're fantastic. So let's just get that very clear. Anybody wants to criticize Peter, then I think it's utterly unfair. He's doing all he can to try and support the family using his expertise.
Mark's words were spot on, but this case highlights something even bigger: that search and rescue capabilities in the UK are inadequate, under-resourced, and too often improvised. Families are left waiting, hoping, and suffering because the very systems meant to bring them closure lack the tools, coordination, and speed required for modern underwater searches. Nicola's case is not the only one. It's simply the one that captured the world's attention. And that's why this conversation can't just end with a critique of systems. It has to come back to Nicola herself. Beyond the failures, beyond the reviews and reports, there is a very real human loss at the center of it all. At the heart of all of this is a woman, a mother, and a family whose lives were forever changed. Nicola deserves to be remembered not as a subject of controversy, but as the person at the center of it, someone whose story should have been met with competence, candor, and compassion. For her family and community, resolution means answers. Until the full truth is revealed, those answers and justice remain out of reach.
And as a family, we're not bothered about anything else. Like, there's nothing else. The only thing is we just have to find her.
You want to know what happened?
Yeah.